and welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence.
And this is Mark Florence.
And today we're talking about It Chapter 2. So we went to see this on opening night, and they had a 5 o'clock showing at our theater on a Thursday because this movie is freaking long, people. It's almost 3 hours, and it ended up being, like, we were gone for 3.5 hours with the previews and just our drive time to the movie theater, which is only like 5 minutes drive time, but that was like a big night out.
It was a fun night. Saw it in the Ultra screen, which was a little different. We didn't have the nice recliners to lay back on. And we had assigned seats right next to a few different people, so it's kind of awkward.
Yeah, the theater was not full because it was a 5 o'clock showing. And so at one point, we just moved to be like in a more open space because the entire row in front of us was empty, which was understandable. But we were literally right next to all these other people because we bought our tickets in advance and we sit where we're assigned. Which, you know what? I cannot believe how many people do not sit in their assigned seats when they go to the movie theater. Am I right?
When we got there were some people not in our seats, but they were one seat over, and then they did the old, I looked at my seat wrong, and then they moved. You could tell they were just not going to the right seats.
I don't know. I guess I'm a rule follower, but that's how I roll. So this movie has some mixed reviews. It's 66% on Rotten Tomatoes currently. I saw a critic today tweet. He thinks this is our generation's The Heretic, which is the sequel to The Exorcist, which people universally hate. We talked about it on the podcast, and I mean, I just feel sorry for it. Other people like it.
I've never even heard of what was it called? The Heretic?
Heretic, yeah.
Oh, I've never even heard of that, so that tells you all you need to know.
And so, I will preface this by saying I liked it. I didn't love it. And this will also be a spoiler-filled review. So if you haven't seen the movie yet and you want to go in spoiler-free, then, maybe don't listen to this whole episode. So a little background on it. Of course, it's based on the novel by Stephen King, which came out in 1986. The miniseries that aired on ABC came out in 1990. And Mark, do you remember watching that, like when it aired, or were you too young to watch it when it aired?
I think I watched it on VHS a couple years later. I don't think I watched it when it aired, or maybe they showed it on TV, like maybe 8 years later or something. Because I don't think I saw it in 1990.
So the original plan for the miniseries in 1990 was that it was going to be an 8 to 10 hour series, and then ABC got a little bit nervous and cut it down to 2 nights, 4 hours total, but that's including commercial breaks. So it ended up being roughly the length of this movie, pretty much. My God, this movie was long.
That's kind of amazing that it was on just TV, like a horror movie just on TV. They didn't make it for a theater or anything, so it must have been less than like a PG rating, I would assume, if it's on network television.
Yeah, and they later adapted The Shining, of course, and they had previously done another Stephen King. The ABC did several Stephen King adaptations, and I think that's fascinating. And those were the days, Meg and I talked about this before, of appointment television. Like, especially where I grew up, we only had 3 channels, 4 if the antenna was, positioned right. And so, yeah, it aired on ABC and we watched it. Like, the entire family watched it.
Well, I had cable, so we had many, many, many options where I lived.
Rub it in! Well, let's talk about the things that we loved or liked in this movie. The first thing that I kept raving about to you during the movie was I just thought this adult casting of these children's characters was perfect, especially like the Eddie character, the nervous kid, who had all the medical issues. I mean, like this adult actor, I was like, okay, this is the kid. He was perfect. And I really loved Bill Hader. and Jessica Chastain. I mean, I loved all of them, but those are the ones that really stood out to me.
Yeah, they were all good. They all, I didn't really remember the first movie so much, so I was really glad that they had the same, they must have filmed it at the same time, but they filmed the kids. The kids were also in the movie, and then they would kind of intersperse them throughout the film with, the adults would be there, and then the kids would be there, and then you could really see, like, I don't know, apples to apples, like how close they were casted and how similar they were and how similar they looked.
Yeah, that was really incredible to me. And then what a treasure trove of acting to draw from for these adult actors to have that first film to look at and and see who their characters were as children and then be able to build off of that. That's incredible to me.
That's a good point. And it was also really cool to see at the beginning of the movie where all these kids, like when they turned into adults, like where they were. Like one guy was like this successful writer and like making a movie. This other guy was like a successful guy in New York City. They all seemed pretty successful, didn't they?
Yeah, I think everybody had, things going for them. And then this call from Mike comes in and their world crashes down.
I was going to say, except for the Mikey guy, he just had to stay in Derry and kind of monitor things. So he kind of took one for the team just to make sure the it guy didn't come back. And somehow they knew that he was probably the it guy was going to come back, I think.
Yeah, because they established in that first movie that it was he was on this cycle of every 27 years. So, yeah, it was expected, of course. A lot of this, I've heard the critics say just in the past couple days, and I agree. I don't think this movie was as scary as the first one. Like, the first one really did get to me, and this one didn't as much. And I don't know if part of it was just the length of it, like it was just so drawn out, or if it was the mood I was in, but it didn't scare me as much as the first one.
Maybe it's because they were adults facing this clown versus kids. Like, to me, it was more scary when, like, the Georgie kid in the first one is, like, this 4-year-old kid with a clown, or, like, these kids are 8, 9, 10, whatever, however old they are, versus a grown-ass man versus a clown.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Maybe it is like more scary watching these kids in the scenarios. I thought the humor was on point a lot. Sometimes it fell flat, but there was some really good moments of laughter. And I mean, I love Bill Hader. I think everything he did was great.
One of the lines I remember is, I'll talk about this later. This guy who escaped from a mental hospital, but anyway, did Bill Hader kill the guy? I can't remember, but anyway, yeah, he kills the guy with the hat.
No, Eddie does, or no, Eddie stabbed him, but then Bill Hader does kill him with the okay, sorry.
So wait, Bill Hader comes in. Okay, Bill Hader is Richie. He puts a hatchet in the guy's head, and then they're in the library when he kills them, and he goes, "Well, that was overdue." Because we're in a library, that's why it's funny, or something like
that. Yes, and his character is a stand-up comic, and it was just perfect. I mean, it was just the perfect role for him. Oh, and shout out to Bill Hader. I saw this thing on Twitter about him talking about his real life struggle with anxiety and how, when he realized that he'll never really overcome anxiety, and even when he was live every Saturday night on SNL, he still had anxiety. I thought that was really powerful and moving, and I think it's really important that more celebrities and just people in general share about their struggles with depression or anxiety or mental illness. So anyway, shout out to him.
I thought it was cool how they introduced his character, like literally just a cut, and then he was puking like off the side of this building because he had just gotten the call. So that was a good way to introduce the Bill Hader character.
Yes, so this is the thing with the pacing in this movie. I appreciated, they did take the time and introduce all of these adult characters and show them all getting that call from Mike and how they reacted. But it was literally so long. This movie was too long, by half, or at least by, could have been cut by, 2/3 of the length. It could have been. I appreciated that, but I just think it could have been shorter and more succinct, and we would have still gotten the point. It's hard. I was reading, it was really hard to cut this down to be that miniseries because it's over 1,000 pages, this novel. And so, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's left out of that miniseries and out of these 2 movies. But my goodness, that was a long time to sit in the theater.
Yeah, the one storyline I thought they really could have done without was I don't even know his name, the guy who had killed his dad or his family or something when he was a kid and he was in this mental hospital. And then this zombie weird skeleton thing showed up and like gave him a knife and like helped him escape, and it was like driving him around to like try to kill these kids. Like, I don't know. I mean, with everything else, with it and all that, I felt like maybe we didn't even need that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And they never really explained. Like, I had a hard time. Like, I'm like, who is that? Because I didn't even remember. I haven't rewatched the first It in a long time, so I didn't even remember that kid's plot line when they first showed him in the flashback. And then I was like, oh, okay, I think I remember this guy. And then they show him as an adult. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting, but like you said, maybe it wasn't necessary. And especially because, they didn't even, whatever happened to the zombie guy driving the car? Like, we literally never saw him again.
We didn't, yeah. After his overdue killing, they never showed the zombie again. So, I mean, I don't know.
The movie itself is very well made. I mean, the acting is great. It's visually brilliant. The thing that I didn't love was the CGI. I think it was scarier when we got glimpses of things versus like seeing things straight on, full on. I just don't think the CGI was great. Like, for example, the old woman character, when she's moving strangely in the background, that's scary. When she's peeking around the corner and you can see that she's naked, okay, that's creepy AF. But then when she comes out and it's this CGI, tall, naked CGI thing, it's like, okay, it's taking me out of the movie because it's not like necessarily well done. Same with the Chinese restaurant scene.
Yeah, I agree with the apartment scene. The lady was creepy, weird, scary, and then when she came to this like larger than life naked old lady, it kind of lost like the realism. But I don't know. I didn't mind the CGI so much. I thought there were some really good scenes like near the end when Bev was in the bathroom stall. I thought that was kind of cool. It was like filling up with blood, and there was like people knocking on the door, like peeking in there. Can't remember. Oh, the Ben character was in the like clubhouse thing he had built, and it was filling up with dirt. So I mean, those visual scenes are pretty cool, and there's like lots of spidery type stuff, and the clown kind of turned into this big like scorpion spider thing near the end. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think like what you mentioned, the blood filling up in that bathroom stall and the dirt, I think those scenes were effective. So some of the CGI, definitely worked and didn't take me out of the moment or the movie, but other scenes did. It was just like, oh, I wish they could have done this a different way. I was reading about the 1990 miniseries, and they did most of the practical effects or most of the special effects with practical effects, meaning they just had like puppets or whatever. The only one they used CGI for was Pennywise going down the drain or coming out of the drain. So, it was a different world. I was talking about the humor really hitting at some point. I love the Eddie character. I loved him in the first movie, and I loved him in this one as well. But there was this point when like the creature thing like vomits on him in the basement of the pharmacy, and then they played that song like Angel in the Morning, and I thought that was really out of place, like when it puked on him. Do you remember that?
I think so. Is that the one that's like, don't come in? Yeah, that was... It
just felt super out of place.
Yeah, that was what his mom was like tied up and there was this like weird creature thing under a blanket. Yeah, that was just I didn't really notice that until you said that, but yeah, that was a little yeah.
I mean, I think it could have been funny without the song. It just felt like, I don't know. It just felt a little bit too like in your face. Like, oh, guess what? This is supposed to be funny.
And then the pharmacist guy looked all weird and he was acting all weird and I don't know, looked like he had all his makeup on, but then you said you thought he was the guy from the original.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just aged the actor who played the pharmacist in It, the first It, I assume. And yeah, that makeup wasn't great. Like, just cast an older actor. It's fine. You did it with everybody else. And like his daughter, who was there snapping her bubblegum, that was an older actress. You don't have to age people with makeup. It just takes me out of the movie.
I did, however, like the Stephen King cameo.
Yeah, that was great. And he was funny, and he had the whole, like, didn't like the ending thing, which, I'm assuming he gets a lot of complaints about that for his books or movies or whatever.
I was just going to say, I really thought this movie was great, had a lot of potential, and then I just didn't like the ending. But that was like a joke because they kept saying that about the Bill character who was a writer and apparently was a great writer until the end, and then he could just never finish his book the way anyone wanted him to.
Something I read about the other day, someone was reviewing the movie and they talked about how this brought up a lot of childhood trauma issues for them and people who have maybe just trauma in their past at all or altogether, and how maybe we compartmentalize and try to forget, not in this supernatural instance of Derry, the town, but maybe we compartmentalize and try to forget these traumatic events from our childhood or from our past, and then, going back and revisiting these places or these people can bring up all of these, traumatic things that we went through and be, triggering for us. So speaking of triggering, like I could not believe, so now I'm getting into some things I didn't like. I could not believe this opening scene of the entire movie was this gay couple. I was like, oh, good. I'm glad that there's a gay couple in this movie. And then like literally they get the crap beat out of them by these people in Derry, and it never really came into play again. And it was just a way to get us to see that Pennywise was back. And I did not like that.
I agree 100% that, that was unnecessary. It never came back into play. I mean, maybe it was just trying to show what kind of a place Derry was. I mean, because the guy was trying to wear like an I Love Derry hat and whatever, they made him take it off. But yeah, I felt like, I don't know, was that in the miniseries too, or
no? I don't think so, and I just don't know. I did not like that.
Yeah, they really could have picked a different way to reintroduce Pennywise. I mean, he just finds a guy like fighting for his life in the river. And then, I mean, I don't know. They definitely could have done it differently.
I mean, that scene with the girl and her mom at the sporting event where she goes under the bleachers, that could have been us, getting introduced to him.
It should have been, because that's, I mean,
that was a better scene. It was creepy.
Yeah, and he goes after kids anyway, so it didn't make much sense. Maybe because the other guy saw him like get eaten or whatever. Maybe that's why. But yeah, I mean, the little girl under the bleachers, even though, to my knowledge, that never even. Did they just think she disappeared, or were kids starting to disappear again? I think.
Yeah, I think Mike brought that up, and she had the wine stain on her cheek, and he used that as like the way to lure her in, that people make fun of the way I look too, which was nice and sweet. Like I think that scene was great. So maybe make that the opening scene of the movie, and then move on. Because when they showed that kid in the flashback, reemerge from the water, I'm like, wait, who is this? Is this one of the guys from that opening scene? And it wasn't. They never came back into play again. So I was just, I don't know. It was just an unnecessary scene, in my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't know who the kid. I didn't realize it was a flashback when the kid was like flushed out of the drain thing, and then he, I don't know, walked up to his old house and the cops were there. If you watched the other movie, you probably would have remembered, but yeah. So
something that was that I read, and I haven't confirmed this, but it's speculation. I know the director was talking about including a couple of cut scenes that they had filmed in the first movie, including them in this second movie so that they could use them and, show the kids in the past. But I also heard, and I don't know if this is true, that they had to CGI Finn Wolfhard, who is the Richie character. They had to CGI him to make him look younger because he has grown so much since they shot the first movie, so that everything that they reshot for this movie, they had to make him look younger because he had grown so much. And I guess everybody, probably looked a little bit different, but I haven't rewatched that first movie, so I definitely didn't notice.
I was going to say this movie, especially when they showed them as kids, reminded me a lot of Stranger Things. And maybe it's just because that one kid is in it. That is a possibility. But I think it's, it's a little later in the 80s, but it's still like a coming of age type thing where they're dealing with this huge supernatural thing. It also reminds me of, I think it's called Stand By Me. Is that right?
Yeah, and Stephen King also wrote that.
Well, there you go.
Something that was not included in the miniseries or either of these movies. In the novel, there's a scene where every single male of the Losers Club loses their virginity to Bev. And that's very problematic. And they did not include it in, either version, which, that's fine.
Wow, that would have really... I mean, they made it seem so innocent because they kept bringing up this love letter that one of the... she thought Bill had written, but I guess it was Ben.
Yeah.
So that really would have changed things. And then one of Ben's like challenge scenes from Pennywise was he was in a classroom with her and he tried to kiss her and she said, "No, we're friends," or something like that. So yeah, that's crazy. I didn't even know that.
It's funny. They're all trying to find their individual tokens for this, final battle, because Mike has told them they all have to go off on their own and find these things, and so it's meaningful to each person. Again, like these scenes were good. They were well done. They were well shot. They were well acted, but it just took so long. I appreciated the backstory, but could we have done it faster and in a different way? Probably. I do love that postcard, that little poem that Ben had written. Like, that was so sweet. And I love that she finds out, in that scene that we were talking about that we liked, that he wrote it so that they get to, have their moment.
I can't believe I'm just remembering this now, but where we live in northern Minnesota, Paul Bunyan is like a big deal. Sort of.
Well, yeah, no, I think so. I mean, we literally have two cities, within driving distance of us, Bemidji and Brainerd, that have Paul Bunyan statues.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Our Paul Bunyan has an axe because he cuts down trees. This Paul Bunyan had like a farming tool, they had a big statue of him in the middle of Derry. And it was Richie, I think, who encountered him. That was actually a really cool scene when like the Paul Bunyan statue was attacking Richie, but no, Paul Bunyan has an axe.
Yeah, not a scythe. I think that was a scythe, right?
I think so, yeah. I mean, so you lose me on that a little bit.
I know. I thought the same thing. I'm like, wait, is that supposed to be Paul Bunyan? And then we saw that it was. And it was like, no, that's not what he has. Because we have these lifelike statues that we take pictures with, like, every time we go to either of those two cities. And Babe the Blue Ox.
I was just going to say, where was Babe the Blue Ox? Like, so Paul Bunyan's a farmer and he doesn't have an ox? Like, this is bad.
That's the most fake thing in this movie. Not the clown, not any of this other business, but like, where's the blue ox? And why is this scythe with Paul Bunyan? No, yeah, I like that scene. I like all these scenes and them like realizing like, okay, this is not real and, you know, having to come back to reality. I like that. I like that they, you know, have to fight Pennywise in their minds. The thing that, I mean, I guess maybe it is problematic from the book and how the ending was written, but it felt like, oh, this is so cheap because they're making it up as they go along because, you know, Mike was like, well, you know, he scratched out the actual ending of what would happen and just to get them all there and together to defeat Pennywise. And then, you know, they sort of come up with it on the spot, which, you know, I guess is fine, but it just feels like it's made up as they go along. So then they're like, oh, but another way to make him small is to make him believe that he's small. And he, you know, eventually shrinks and they literally tear out his heart. So I don't know. What did you think of the ending?
Like I said earlier, it was a very good movie. I just don't no, I'm just kidding. No, I thought the ending was pretty good. You know, they overcame their demons. They all came together. Especially the Eddie guy really dug deep and he kind of started the whole like Pennywise like coming down to size, and then he ended up dying, unfortunately. But I thought the whole ending sequence scene thing was a little long, maybe. Like, I really had to go to the bathroom, and I like looked at my phone, and I'm like, it seemed like the end was coming, and there was like an hour left, and I'm like, okay, I just got to go to the bathroom. So I mean, they were in that underground cave cavern thing for about 45 minutes, I think.
Yeah, it was a little long. You know, what I was thinking, though, is maybe it is a good message because it shows that words and what we say to people or things or what we think, you know, matter and can, you know, hurt people or harm them. So, you know, maybe there's a deeper message there. Like, they're like, you're just a clown, blah, blah, blah. Like, you can actually, you know, beat someone down with that more than physical danger. I don't know.
That's what I didn't understand. Like, if Pennywise or it can just kill people, why didn't he kill these people? Because, like, the little girl at the near the beginning, he just gets her close and eats her. And at the end, it seemed like he was trying to kill the people, but he couldn't. I mean, is it all just fear in your mind and all that, or I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely layers to it and levels, and I don't know.
I did like the Georgie scene near the end. So even near the end again. So, you know, about in the middle of the movie, these people have to, you know, go back in their past and overcome these demons, but then at the end they kind of have to do it again. So they re-showed the scene in Bill's basement where Georgie's there, and there was you know, throughout the movie too, this kid who has moved into Bill's house is kind of like Georgie, and he's by that sewer. He says get away from the sewer, and then Bill finds out that Pennywise plans to kill him, so he follows him into the carnival funhouse, which was a pretty cool scene, I thought. Mm-hmm. Funhouse, you know, I can't go wrong with the mirror scene, but yeah, I really like the scene where where Bill had to actually kill his little brother and like drown him, like to realize he wasn't real and that it actually wasn't his fault that he died. So I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, all of these people, like you said, overcoming their demons and coming to terms with, you know, the things that they felt guilt about or that had traumatized them, and overcoming them in order to beat or overcome Pennywise. Like that, the message is good and it's clear. And yeah, it was there were some powerful moments. So not everything is lost.
Another really powerful thing at the end is when they were, you know, they'd already defeated him and they're walking through the town and they looked in the window and they were all adults, and then they looked in the window and they were all kids. I thought that was really cool.
Oh, I love that. And they show that in the trailer and it gave me goosebumps. Like, so great. And we haven't talked about poor Stanley, who died by suicide, but he, like, had said, like, I saw the future and I knew that I had to sacrifice myself or take myself out of the game, or however he phrased it, in order for you all to live. And that really moved me.
Definitely, yeah. And then the scene at the end when they go swimming in the lake or pit thing was really cool, like tie back to the first movie, I thought.
Yeah, that was nice too.
Hey guys, so I got the opportunity to see It Chapter 2 last night, so I wanted to share my thoughts, and of course I'd love to hear what you guys think. My review is obviously going to be referencing to the book a lot, because I don't know, that's just how I watched the movie. It was kind of fun though to watch it with my husband because he didn't read the book, so I was kind of imagining how he was sort of seeing it through his eyes. But I was definitely sort of every step of the way thinking about the book along the way. I don't know about you guys. I think first off, I'll say I don't know if I enjoyed this one quite as much as I enjoyed the first one. I've actually been able to stay away from reviews, so I'm not sure what the sort of general consensus is. But I definitely liked the first one a little bit better. I think it did a better job of the sort of like coming of age sort of backdrop and sort of all the Losers Club coming together, and it kind of had that sort of nostalgia feeling. And this one was obviously more rooted in the grown-ups, which, I mean, they were cast wonderfully. Obviously, Bill Hader was perfect. And side note, I really liked what they did with Richie in the book and in the 90s version. You know, he really is that comic relief, and he really doesn't have that sort of extra element to him. So I really appreciated that they sort of gave him this sort of secret that we don't know, and they're quite subtle about it, and I just thought it was really well done. And also, going back to the beginning of this movie with the gay couple who are sort of definitely the victims of homophobia, that happens in the book. So I feel like thematically it makes sense what's going on with Richie, and especially for, you know, a 2019 audience. I just felt like that was a really nice addition, and I was really happy with things they cut out. Audra, I think her name is, the wife of Bill, she's not in this one, and I was fine with that. I guess she was in the beginning when we sort of like establish, you know, that he's a novelist and screenwriter, and so we do see that he has a wife. But I was sort of glad that she was kind of not brought back, and we didn't have to watch her sort of get taken in by the deadlights. That was fine with me. So sometimes it's nice to have things cut out and we don't have to worry about it. But I thought overall that this movie was quite faithful to the book. There were things I was really happy that happened that were in the book, like even like Paul Bunyan I thought was great, and they went ahead with the fortune cookies. They sort of did some different stuff, but they also had what Stephen King described. And speaking of Stephen King, obviously it was a delight that he made an appearance. That was really cool. And overall I thought they did really well. I think one problem I had with it is it for me wasn't that particularly scary. The things that scare me tend to be more subtle. And they did have those moments, like for instance, when the little girl with the sort of port wine stain on her face, when she's down below the bleachers and Pennywise is counting to sort of blow, he claims he can blow that off of her face. I thought that was very creepy and well done. That was one of my favorite parts, as well as the part in the funhouse, which was an addition, was not in the novel, when Bill and Pennywise are sort of on opposite ends of the mirror and the kids in between. I thought that was quite scary and well done. Both, of course, dealt with a kid in peril, so I guess maybe that was the added scary aspect to it. But I think overall, my husband, when we got out of the movie, we were discussing it with a friend who came with us, and he sort of described it as like this sort of high budget action film take on a horror movie. And I think that is sort of the best way to describe it. Obviously they had a huge budget, and they were really able to do these really huge CGI experiences. And I think for me, that's not as scary. I don't know how you guys feel. And also our friend pointed out, Pennywise, the novelty is gone, right? After the first movie, you kind of have to like pick it up a little bit and you have to make it even bigger. But I felt like sometimes by making it bigger, and making things like, huge in scale, but also sort of aspect, it sort of lost some fear factor for me. I don't know how you guys felt, but for me, it just felt like it kind of wasn't as scary as I wanted it to be. And one good sign of that is my husband didn't cover his eyes once. So that's a pretty good sign that maybe it wasn't as scary as it should have been. But on the other end of the coin, I felt like they really handled the characters really well. And if you listen to Horror Rewind a lot, you know that one of my favorite things, I really love sort of delving into the characters' flaws and sort of specific unique trials they've been through, and sort of then layering that into the horror. And that's why I love the book so much, and I very much thought they did a good job of that. I thought they especially like by giving Richie kind of that extra flavor, that extra sort of thing that he's going through, I felt like they really understood what Stephen King was trying to do with this novel. And so overall, I really enjoyed it. I felt like very sucked into the movie. Again, that's another way I sort of like gauge how much I liked it, and I wasn't getting distracted by what I need to do this week or anything. I was very much plugged in, and even though the two people next to me are on their phone, which makes my eye twitch, I barely noticed. So I think overall it was quite a delightful movie, and those kid actors are awesome, of course. It was a little distracting, this sort of like they sort of youthed them down with like CGI, and that kind of made me a little annoyed. It was just a little too much. But I also, of course, I love a romance in horror, and I knew Ben and Bev would be together, but it was still fun to watch that unravel. And I actually got like an actual physical chill when she's sort of in the blood and he's sort of in the dirt, and he finally like says the poem, and so I thought that was a really sweet and very well done moment. So that made me smile. But overall, I think it was pretty good. I maybe my expectations were a little too high, but at the same time, it was a 3-hour movie and it didn't feel like 3 hours to me, which is pretty impressive, especially as I get older and I start to nod off a little bit more. It's very impressive that they kept my attention for 3 hours and it didn't feel long, or I wasn't looking at my watch, my proverbial watch, or anything like that. So, I'm sort of like balancing in the middle a little bit. I feel like I didn't come out of it like how I came out of Us or how I came out of Hereditary, where I just feel like I'm like going to transcend the world because I'm just like, oh my God, it was so good. So I think I'm still processing it a little bit. But overall, I thought it was pretty decent, and it was pretty faithful to the book, not entirely, but pretty faithful, and that they got the main points, that it's about them, it's about their backgrounds and what makes them unique, and it's about the friendship and all those things. So I thought it hit almost all of what it needed to hit. I could have used it a little bit scarier. That's my only thing. But, a lot of people in the theater were jumping and laughing and screaming and stuff. So maybe I'm just a little hard to scare, maybe a little bit. I don't know, but I'd be curious to know how everybody felt, if you were scared, and which parts in particular got under your skin. So those are my thoughts on It Chapter 2. Thanks for listening, guys.
Well, let's rank this movie on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being you hated it, 10 being you think it's a perfect movie. Should our scale be red balloons?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so how many red balloons do you give It Chapter 2?
I'm going to give it 7. 7 out of 10. I thought it was a great, well-produced, well-directed, well-shot movie. Visually, it was really awesome. I slightly remembered the original, with what was the guy's name from Three's Company?
John Ritter.
John Ritter. So I did remember that Chinese restaurant scene, and I believe something where they're all sitting in a library, which I don't know if it was really in this movie or not. But no, I enjoyed it. A lot of cool special effects, a lot of interesting, situations and flashbacks and relationships between these kids and things they had to overcome. It was a little long for me, especially since I had to go to the bathroom. But yeah, I don't want to say too many bad things about it, but it just didn't quite do it for me.
It's funny because you enjoyed it more than I did, yet I am also ranking it 7 out of 10. So that's like where our expectations lie. And so, yeah, my 7 is different than your 7 apparently, because I think you liked it more than I did. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I would say it's good, but not great. It definitely is too long. But it is a well-made movie, so why would I crap on it? Because I love horror, so I'm thankful for horror. And we had so many great previews.
I was literally just gonna say that.
Yeah, we have the Black Christmas preview, which was amazing. We had the Underwater trailer, which looks amazing also, Kristen Stewart. And then there were a couple others. What were they? I can't remember right now. But we had so many amazing horror specific trailers, like What a Time to Be Alive, and we have so much to look forward to.
Yeah, Black Christmas looked really good to me. What was the one that was really short and they didn't really show anything?
Oh yeah, that's with I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, we had a great preview, which didn't give anything away, which I love that because it just makes me want to go see it.
Tenet or something?
Yeah.
I have no idea what that is, by the way.
No, we neither of us have any idea, but we had some good previews, which is nice because, 20 minutes of your life is spent in previews at the movie theater these days, which, I love previews. It's fine. I mean, if you haven't seen it too, I mean, absolutely, I think you should go see it.
I definitely think everybody out there needs to see this movie, even though it's not the greatest. It's just a must watch, I think.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So until next time, we'll see you in the horror section.
Bye.